Hey folks, welcome in. This is Chris with Alpenglow Digital. We are kicking off our mini-series on Power Automate. This little series is meant to help introduce you to Power Automate if you haven't used it before. We are going to walk through a really simple use case in this video, which is we have a SharePoint list. Folks can populate it using a Power Apps form, and then once they submit the request, we want to send them an automated email. So we're going to create a flow within Power Automate that looks something like this. Very simple. Watches a SharePoint list. When something is created in the list, it sends an email to the user. And the final output for that will look something like this. Not super pretty. In the next part in our series, we're going to talk a little bit more about HTML, how to make this look a bit prettier, add some padding around elements, add background colors, things like that you'd expect in an email. But for now, we're going to talk about how to add an image, how to add some static text, and how to bring in some dynamic values like the SharePoint ID or the type of event from our SharePoint list. So without further ado, let's go. Hey folks, welcome into Power Automate. Before we jump into building our flow, I want to give a little bit of context for the project that we're going to use here in this video. We have a really simple Power App front-end form. This is something we used in previous videos. Just going to allow a user to submit a request for event planning assistance. That request is then going to populate the SharePoint list. So that's kind of what's going on in the background. This will be particularly important when we eventually test our flow. So if you haven't been to Power Automate before, go on over to make.powerautomate.com. And as with other Microsoft products, if you're already in SharePoint or Word Online, you can come up here to the top left, see all of your applications, and Power Automate should be there. If not, click More Apps, and you will land here. So we are here in Power Automate. You can do a bunch of different things. If you had previous flows or flows that folks have created and shared with you, you'll find them under My Flows. And as with other products in the Power Platform space, there's a lot of ways to create something. You can use templates, you can go check out learning resources, you can use AI right over here to describe it and design it. And what we're going to do in this case is connect a flow to the creation of a new item in a SharePoint list so that when somebody creates a new request, it gets populated in the SharePoint list, we trigger this flow, and we send them an email that says, hey, thanks for submitting your request. Here are some next steps or some resources. There are kind of three types of primary flows that we find ourselves using most often. An automated flow is something that's triggered by a designated event, often outside of Power Automate. This could be something like a Power Apps button. Maybe you click it in Power Apps, it runs a flow and then sends data back to Power Apps. An instant flow allows you to trigger this whenever you'd like to. Maybe you have it set up to trigger like a report for a SharePoint list, and whenever you click the button, it looks at the last, like, say, 24 hours worth of data, gives you a report. We do a couple scheduled flows that we have set up at the end of each week, and that could allow you to schedule a certain date or time or run it recurring every hour, every day, every week. We use those to kind of generate reports that send us emails in the mornings, like on Fridays, and it allows us to just kind of see how the team's performing throughout the week. So in our case, we're worried about SharePoint, and so we're going to use an automated cloud flow. And so I am going to call this let's call it test flow, and then we need to choose our trigger. So as we mentioned before, we mentioned SharePoint and Power Apps. The trigger can be a lot of different things. So whether you're using Forms or Planner, you can search this list, and this may not even be exhaustive. Yeah, you can go down here and search for more. In our case, we want this to be triggered when an item is created in SharePoint. So we're going to click Create, and it is going to take a second and take you. If this looks different from what you're used to, if you've used Power Apps before, or Power Automate, pardon me, we are in the new designer, and so you can toggle that off and on up here in the corner. I've really liked the classic designer, and so we're just spending some time trying to get used to kind of the new designer. All right, so we've got our big canvas. This looks a little excessive right now, but as you work on more and more complex apps, especially those with different conditions, you'll end up using quite a bit of horizontal space. The first thing we want to do is update our trigger. So if you click this, we need to tell Power Automate what SharePoint list it needs to watch and then trigger when a new item is created. If you click here, and you should see all of your SharePoint sites on your domain, or at least those you have accessed recently. If you don't, and this happened to me just a second ago, you may need to come down here. It may say no connection or a different connection. If you change this, you should see your whatever logged in alias here, or you can add a new one, and that will kind of connect you to the domain, and then you should be able to see all of your sites. So in our case, we have our event planning assistant site, and the SharePoint list that is on that site is this first one. Great. Okay, so now no more errors. We've got our trigger properly selected. So when a list by this name on this site gets a new item, we will trigger the subsequent steps in this flow. Okay, so we're going to keep things simple. And I want an email to be sent when this is created, and I want that to be sent to the person that submitted the request. So I'm going to click this button, which allows us to enter another step or action. There are a ton of things that you can do within Power Automate. Some of them are premium features. You'll see this little diamond icon. And many of them are not premium, thankfully, including a lot of the most commonly used ones like sending an email. So if you type in here, send an email, we will see probably a handful of options. And so in our case, we're going to use the Office 365 Outlook connection, and we are going to use send an email v2. All right, that created our next action here. And when that pops up, you'll see a lot of fields that you'd expect to see in an email. To, subject, a body. There are advanced parameters down here that are things like the from person or alias. You can send on behalf of an alias if you have sending rights. You can also CC or BCC folks and attach things. This is super helpful if you maybe have like an FAQ PDF. In this context, somebody's requesting assistance, you could either put that FAQ in the body of the email, or if you have a PDF, you could attach it. That's very cool. You could also make it high priority or low priority down here, like an importance level. And so what we want to do, though, is this allows you really just to enter in static information. So I can enter in my own email address, for example. But what I want to do is use some of the information provided by our SharePoint list item that was created to enter in here to make this dynamic. And so if you switch over to advanced mode, you will see the option to add dynamic fields. So this first thing is going to give you a lot of fields that were provided or created in previous steps in your flow. So this is the step that it was created. In our case, it's this first one, which is the trigger. And then if we had other steps, you'd also see them down here. And again, this is just going to give you a handful of fields. And you can see if you see more, it'll add all of them down here. So these are all of the SharePoint fields that you could insert in your email, which is great. And so let's do that really quickly. The to line, we're going to use our lightning bolt. And we want that to be the created, whoever created this SharePoint list item. This is going to be the person that submitted it. And so you can see created by is the field name. And in our case, we want to grab the created by email. So this is going to send an email to the person that created our SharePoint list. Let's just do thank you for submitting your request. And how about we include like the ID, the SharePoint list ID. Again, this kind of helps both the processing team and the submitter track which request they're referring to. So I'm going to add ID just as text, and then I'm going to grab the ID here and close this out. In the body, I do eventually want to add some more information about the request, but let's just first test things. This is a test email. Okay, we will go and add some more fields later. Let's save this and give it a test to see what happens. Now that we've saved, we do want to test it. So if you have submitted a lot of examples or tests beforehand, you can come up here to test, use the automatically option, and select prior flows and basically rerun them. This is really helpful if you are just tweaking maybe the styles of an email and you don't want to have to go back to the SharePoint list and keep creating new items. You can run tests. In our case, we're going to submit a request for the first time. So we're going to come back up here to our Power Apps solution. We're going to say this is a test wedding. I have some lorem ipsum here for the description. We're going to pick an arbitrary date and time. We're going to say it's a wedding for 25 folks. and submit. Okay, so our little Power Apps said that we submitted this successfully. So if we come over here to the SharePoint list, we'll give it a second. I'm going to refresh it. So here is our request that was properly submitted. And now let's see if our flow ran. So from Power Automate, you can come here and click the back button, and you'll be taken to kind of the overview page for your flow. So this is going to show you things like whoever the co-owner is, what sort of connections you're using, when it was created or modified. And one of the best parts about this is that it shows your run history for all your flows. So this is every time that your flow is triggered and ran. So a minute ago, I submitted another test to make sure this would work correctly. And so we're going to wait for our new request. So if you click refresh flow runs, you will still not see anything, but it will eventually trigger. And so here it is. 1 second ago, this took a very, very short period of time. I think it's about 1 second. And it succeeded. So let's see if it actually sent us an email. So I'm going to come over here to my other inbox, and I'm going to drag this over, and we can see the email that I got. So here it is. Thank you for submitting your request with our ID number, and it's from me, in this case to me, and it is a test email. So that works great. If you wanted to see all of the data that was supporting this particular run of the flow, you can actually click into these, and it will take you to your flow. It'll show you that each succeeded and how long each took. So in our case, it took about 0.4 seconds to get all the data from SharePoint. It took about 1 second to generate and send the email. There is just some natural lag built into everything on the internet, and so obviously from the time that we submitted something, it didn't take 1.4 seconds for this to end up in my inbox, but the flow itself runs very quickly. And so I am going to now come back and let's tweak a couple things about our flow. So it looks fine, but I do want to send the user who submitted a request a little bit more data about their request. So let's delve back into the email. Now, if you have coded HTML emails before, you know that you are teleported back to 1995 with regards to options you have for structuring your emails and styling your emails. If you have not coded HTML emails before, in the next video, we will dive a little bit deeper into that because you can create some nice looking emails without a ton of coding knowledge. And in our particular case right now, I'm just going to add a few things. So I do want there to be an image in this email. I always think that looks nice. So we're going to use an image tag. Again, I clicked right here to switch over to code view. And so I'm going to open up an image tag. I'm going to refer to something. I'll go grab the source URL in a second. And then below that, let's have just a normal header that says, thanks for submitting your request. Make sure you close out the header. And then let's say we want to mention the event title. So say we want to put that in like a header 3. So within here, I'm going to click on lightning bolt again because I want to grab that information from the trigger so we can figure out what kind of event they gave us. So in this case, it's the type of event value that's already right here. That's stuck in here. This is kind of the format that it uses to show you this is a SharePoint value. And I want maybe header 4. We will say maybe, let's say number of guests. Again, you can include whatever information you want. This is just a way to kind of show you how to grab information from SharePoint and display it in your email. Number of guests down here. And so again, this is going to be statically typed text, and then the number will be dynamic based on the input from SharePoint. And let's just do one last paragraph. We can't wait to help you with your event. Please allow our team 3 days for processing. Okay. Something like that. And then you might have a footer, with links off to maybe a team alias or resources and things like that. Okay. So let's grab a URL to use for our image. All right, for this quick example, we are going to do 2 things. Firstly, we're going to show you how to just grab a URL that you may have for an image hosted online somewhere, and we're going to use that in our email. And then we're going to show how to grab something from SharePoint and use that using a new step in our flow. So firstly, I just popped over here to Adobe stock image site. I'm just going to grab the image link here. Again, please always use photos that you have a license for. In our case, this is not going to be something in production, so I'm just going to use this watermarked image. So I grab the image link here. I'm going to come over to the image source, and I'm just going to paste that in. So now we are going to generate an image at the top of our email. We're going to generate a header. We're going to generate a slightly smaller header that has our type of event value, and an even slightly smaller header that has the number of guests, and then dynamically enters that in, and a paragraph at the bottom. So let's save and see how that works. Now that we've saved that, we can use the built-in test functionality because we already have an item that was created in SharePoint that ran our first flow, which sent that really simple email. And we can use that same input data and run it through now, in this case, our new updated email. So if you come up here to test, you can click automatically with a recently used trigger, and you'll see all of your prior flows appear. In our case, this is the one that ran most recently, and we do want to use that again. So what this is going to do is take the same data that was used in that flow, rerun it through our new steps, and it should generate a new email that now has an image and our header and other dynamic text. So let's see if that happened. All right, so that ran, and I made a rookie mistake that I want to show you. So here's the email that it sent. And what it did was interpret our HTML as just plain text. So this should be a header. Instead, it just literally gave us the HTML tag. I've made this mistake before. It's very easy to fix, thankfully. If you come in to send an email, we want to be in the code view. And I thought we were, but we're actually in the other view. So I'm going to grab all of this. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to click toggle code view, and I'm going to paste it in. And we are going to test it again. And that way, the email component will ingest that as HTML, and then the email generated should look much better. So let's see if that works. All right, so we got good news. Here is the email that was sent. So again, the subject hasn't changed from kind of our original email. We do have our image here that is, of course, gigantic because we haven't styled it, and this is just the parameter probably that Adobe had on their stock site. And we have our header. The type of event was pulled in correctly, and the number of guests was pulled in. We have our little paragraph here. So one other quick note, if you do not specify a from parameter in your flow, it will get sent from the connection that you're using. And so in our case, if I come in here and click edit, it is using my chris@outlookdigital.com connection. And so the emails will be sent from me. But if I did want to change that and say maybe I had an alias that I was an approved sender for, I could specify who it was sent from here. What you can't do, of course, is specify like this is your colleague and have a bunch of emails come from a random person. It will look at this connection here and determine if you are allowed to send from this email address. So if it's your own email address, of course, that's fine. If it's an alias that you have sender rights on, that would be fine too. There's a lot we could do to make this email look prettier, and much of that we're going to cover in the next video. But for now, I do want to address one thing, and that was that the image itself was pretty gigantic. So if you come into your image tag, it doesn't matter where it's at, if it's before or after the source, and type image equals, you can pass it a parameter, and this is going to be kind of the set width for your image. I don't know how big that original image was. Let's try just 500. I think if you set the width this way, you don't need to specify whether this is pixels or point or rem or things like that. And again, you're an email, so you're not going to have a lot of options for the type of data you're specifying. So here we're going to use width 500. Maybe here let's do type of event, make that look a little bit prettier, and let's give that another go. So I'm going to test. I'm going to do automatic. And the nice thing is it will automatically save your flow before it tests, so you don't need to click save and then test. And we're going to run this. Okay, so we ran that, and here's what the latest email looks like. So again, this is looking better, still not perfect, super polished, it's still, just white and a little bit bland. If you're going to use a banner image, you probably want something shorter than this. But what it does show is how you can modify the width of an image quite easily within HTML within Power Automate. And then we added type of event, for example, as static text, which is a wedding. So this is starting to shape up like you may want if you're going to send the person that submitted a request some information about their request, confirming that you've received it, and so on. Alrighty, folks, that does it for video 1 in our mini Power Automate series. Hopefully the use case we outlined in this video is something that you can envision implementing in your own work. Power Automate has a lot of great capabilities that you really just need to dive in and kind of experience for yourself. There are a ton of connectors and triggers and different actions that you can take. We have some more complex apps ourselves that send emails to a bunch of different folks and request approval and do things like that. So it really, the possibilities are endless. You just got to dive in and check it out. So in the next video, we are going to take that email that we generated here and make it look a little bit prettier. We're going to dive a little bit further into HTML and CSS, but not too deep because it is email after all. And we are going to add a little bit more copy so that it looks like a genuine confirmation email that you might receive. So without further ado, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.